Hello my beautiful friends, and welcome back to my channel. And in today's episode of Rid's Recent Reads, a series on my channel where I, Rid, talk about the recent reads that I've read, I am going to be talking about two books, Frankenstein and Edgedancer. I am super excited to talk about these books, and I hope you enjoy these videos. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is a classic novel, and you know what? This is a book that absolutely deserves its classic status. I think the lore behind the way that this book came to be is super interesting. So basically, Mary Shelley and her super famous husband, Percy Shelley, they were in a group with, I believe, Lord Byron, and it was just a bunch of writers coming together and having a competition to see who could write the best horror novel. Is it 50, 100 years later? It's safe to say that Mary Shelley kind of won that competition. The iconography of Frankenstein is just embedded in our culture at this point. Something that really surprised me about Frankenstein was the quality of the writing. Just the prose itself was so beautiful, and there's so many beautiful descriptions of nature. This book, part of this book takes place in the Swiss Alps, and I think that Mary Shelley just convinced me to one day, like now it's on my bucket list, that I need to go to Sweden and visit the Alps because wow, those descriptions were just gorgeous. And I think those descriptions actually tie into a very prevalent theme throughout the novel, which is this idea of man versus nature. Obviously, I didn't give a summary for this book because I feel like it's so iconic, but it's basically about this character, Victor, who brings to life a monster, essentially. And this idea of man versus nature and the idea that what Victor has done goes against the laws of nature. Shelley hits in on that a lot throughout this book. And, you know, those descriptions of the beautiful mountains kind of juxtapose with the descriptions of the monster. I think the most tragic aspect about Frankenstein is the idea that Frankenstein's monster is really not a monster at all. And I think that if only one person had extended compassion and gratitude towards the monster, maybe he wouldn't be a monster, and maybe he would have grown into a genuinely good person. I feel like a lot of what Shelley had to say about human nature was very pessimistic, and like after the last year of the pandemic, with, you know, watching people like just not give a shit about other people, I felt like this book was strangely relevant, and it made me think, like, yeah, how do people react to entities that they're not familiar with, and how would they react to this new kind of person? I have to say the audiobook version narrated by Dan Stevens was fantastic. Highly, highly recommend the audiobook. There are some elements to this book that are a little dated, but overall it felt pretty relevant despite the fact that it was written over 100 years ago. And of course, it was October, so Frankenstein was perfect for the spooky vibes. The other book that I wanted to talk about today was Edgedancer by Brandon Sanderson. This is the novella that slots in between Words of Radiance and Oathbringer in the Stormlight Archive. I've taken a pretty long break from the Stormlight Archive, but I'm planning on getting back into the series. Not this year, but definitely next year. I don't think this was a good novella, but I did love Lift as a character, and I just adore Lift so much. But I want to talk about my criticisms of the novella first before I just gush over Lift for a little bit. It really didn't impress me as much because earlier this year I read The Black God's Drums by P. Djeli Clark. I feel like in The Black God's Drums, Clark was able to create a whole world and magic system and history in such a small amount of space. And when you compare that novella to Edgedancer, Edgedancer feels a little cheap because it just feels like this novella only existed to sort of cram in more world building and more lore that Sanderson wasn't able to cram into the already super long Words of Radiance. And just in terms of like economy of words and being able to, you know, fit in a lot of things into a small space, The Black God's Drums is able to operate on so many different levels and still feel like a coherent storyline and not feel like this book only existed because, you know, the author wasn't able to fit in this stuff in the actual book. And I know that sounds a little harsh, but I actually did end up really enjoying this novella. I think that Sanderson is always kind of shaky with the beginnings, and I wasn't really into how exposition heavy Edgedancer was at the beginning of this novella, but then towards the end, especially the last 2/3, I just kind of fell in love with Lift's character and her arc of kind of, you know, coming to terms with the world changing, and just the idea of this like 12-year-old girl who is very feral and just unabashedly herself. I love that. It felt very healing to like my inner child, because I feel like when I was that age, I was always like trying to hide my personality, and I was always trying to like make myself smaller. So reading Lift being just unabashedly awesome felt very, very affirming, and I just love Lift as a character. I think that she's incredible, and I can't wait for Oathbringer, because I know that Lift is more of a key player in Oathbringer. So yeah, while I don't think that this was a necessarily good, objectively good piece of work, I did enjoy it. And I think that those are two things that can kind of coexist within myself. You know, you can recognize that something is not necessarily good, but still like it. So that's kind of where I'm at with Edgedancer, and it definitely did make me excited. By the end, I was pretty excited to kind of get back into Stormlight and get back into the world of Roshar. And yeah, that is it for this video. I am so excited for so many things coming up on this channel. Wheel of Time is coming out, and obviously that's going to be a huge portion of my content, but I will still be making videos about other books. So if you're not here for the Wheel of Time stuff, I will be sprinkling in some normal bookish content. And as always, thank you so much for watching my videos. I feel like I can never fully convey how much you all mean to me and how much your support means to me, and I love this hobby more than anything in the world. My booktube channel is just my little baby, and I just love making videos about books every week, and I feel so lucky that I get to do this and have people respond. So thank you so much for watching my videos, and I will see you in the next video.